What's up, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of Go Talk with Marcus, powered by Poddex, fueled by GoFuel. At this point, we might as well just dub this Payton Doyle week because this will be the fourth episode of the week, and this will be the third time that Payton Doyle has been on the show. But it's all fine and dandy because it's Payton, and he's good people, and he knows what he's talking about. I apologize in advance if you guys can hear my fan, but it's really hot. So if you can hear that, I do apologize. But what's up, man, for the third time this week? How are you?
Feeling good, man. Ready to talk about these freaking crazy basketball. All this free agency stuff is unbelievable, man. I mean, it's like the whole NBA landscape could be changed in an instant here if we just get one Woj bomb saying that Kevin Durant's getting traded.
That would be insane. Real quick, at the top of the week on Sunday, I did a show with my guy Martin, Stories of the Basketball Society and the Basketball Society podcast. We previewed everything that we're going to talk about today. So if you haven't been tuned into the news and you don't want any spoilers, stop watching or listening to this episode. Go watch the episode from Sunday and then come back to this so that you can understand what we're talking about. Or you can not. I don't care. But you're going to watch both anyway. But just for your own sanity, I think you might enjoy it better if you do it that way. With that being said, let's start right off the top. Before we jump into the basketball, I don't want to spring this on you, but I literally just thought about this as I'm talking. The one thing I do want to talk about that's non-basketball related is Baker Mayfield now being traded to the Carolina Panthers. There's a lot of speculation about what that could potentially mean for the Panthers as far as where they go this season. Dan Orlovsky went on Get Up after the trade was made the following day and said, Baker Mayfield to the Panthers. If we get 2020 Baker Mayfield, that's a playoff team. How do you – it's kind of hard to say whether or not you like this move because this is really the only option was to send Baker to the Panthers. There wasn't really anything else. But what are you thinking is the ceiling? Do you think Baker wins the job? Do you think this is a playoff team with Baker Mayfield under center?
Well, no, I don't think it's a playoff team with Baker Mayfield under center. I think they're the third best team in their division. Even with Baker Mayfield, the Saints are better, and of course the Bucs are better. Dan Orlovsky, though, with all due respect, is a simp for every mediocre quarterback to ever exist. If we're being honest, he has this man crush on Carson Wentz. He has a man crush on Baker. He just is in love with every mediocre quarterback. He loves to hype them up. So with all due respect to Dan Orlovsky, I'm not really too worried about him hyping Baker up. I could tell you this. Baker is 100% going to win the job. I know Brian Bolstered Up Sports does not agree with that because he is in love with Sam Darnold. And I just don't see why you would think that Sam Darnold is going to beat out Baker Mayfield.
Why wouldn't Sam Darnold beat out Baker Mayfield? I'm a Darnold guy too. Why wouldn't he?
Well,
the situations are, I think, the exact same. So this is why I don't think Baker will, and I think it'll be only really. This might sound crazy. I think Baker's going to win the job. I don't think he should. We've seen Baker Mayfield with a very good offensive line, with reliable weapons, with a reliable defense, and it's resulted in a whole bunch of nothing. Really, if you take away the one trip to the playoffs, if we're being honest. So Sam Darnold's, he already knows the system. Sam Darnold looked incredible. Whether you like Sam Darnold or not, when you look at the stats and when they started off 3-0, Sam Darnold looked fantastic in the first 3 weeks of the season last season. And he didn't start going downhill until Christian McCaffrey got hurt. But why were people surprised about that? Because all Sam Darnold has done is play bad football because he hasn't had a non-bottom 5 O-line and he hasn't really had a running game. You give him an O-line that's not bottom 5 and you give him a running game and Sam Darnold plays good football. I wouldn't be surprised if Baker Mayfield wins the job, but I think you stick with Sam. Maybe that's just me being the Sam Darnold guy, I guess, and me being slightly biased towards Sam and having completely abandoned ship on Baker Mayfield after the last 18 or so months of watching Baker Mayfield play football and listening to Baker Mayfield and all the things that he's kind of said and stuff. And I do, to a degree, I do feel for Baker with everything that he's going through because he has given his all to the Cleveland Browns organization, so it seems. But I would start Sam Darnold. I really would.
There's no justification behind saying that is the thing. Baker Mayfield, you could bring up any freaking interception number you want. Sam Darnold has a higher interception percentage.
He does. That's why I'm not talking interceptions.
Baker Mayfield's touchdown percentage is infinitely better than Sam Darnold's is. Baker Mayfield is a better quarterback than Sam Darnold is. Overall, he's a better quarterback.
Is the gap between Baker Mayfield and Sam Darnold so much so where we're talking about a multiple game win differential between Sam and Baker.
Yes.
Because this is still the third worst team in the third best team in the division, whether it's Sam or whether it's Baker Mayfield. I don't see this team winning more than 8 games with either guys at quarterback. Like, is it? And neither one of these guys are going to be the long-term solution, most likely. So it's really so because of that, what does it matter? Like, Baker's going to start, but I don't think it matters.
Because Matt Rule wants to save his job. That's
Matt
why.
Rule wants to go back to college.
Matt Rule is worried right now. This is my back is against the wall. I'm on the freaking ropes. What am I going to do? Sam Darnold, like I said, this is all I have to say about Sam Darnold. He's known for 2 things: getting mono and freaking seeing ghosts. That's it. Winning football games is not one of the things that he's known for. He's known for 2 things: getting mono.
He was playing for the New York Jets.
I don't care who he was freaking playing for, dude. Baker Mayfield got drafted to a team that was 0-16 the year before they drafted him. And he turned them around instantly. He was a huge part in that. And the people
there was a lot of talent on that Cleveland Browns roster.
There was. You don't have to sell me on that, bro. You don't have to sell me on that. You're preaching to the choir on that. Listen, I understand, and I understand Baker Mayfield underperformed with the talent that was given around him. But who's to say Sam Darnold would do any better? This is the guy that's had back-to-back season now where he's thrown more interceptions than touchdowns. I don't care how bad of a situation you're in. If you're actually a quarterback that's worth anything, you're throwing more touchdowns than interceptions, unless you're a rookie in Jacksonville and your name is Trevor Lawrence. Okay, then you have a pass. But any other circumstance, no, you don't have a freaking excuse. Sam Darnold has underperformed just as Baker has, but Baker has a playoff win. Baker has gotten to the playoffs. We all know that Baker Mayfield can at least keep a team in playoff contention. Sam Darnold has never even come remotely close to doing that. Baker Mayfield, I would bet my house that Baker Mayfield wins this starting job. And
I agree with you. I 100% agree with you. Baker is going to win the job.
This is Matt Rule's chance of just, please save my job, someone, because it's not going to be Matt Corral out of the 3rd round, and it's not going to be Mr. Mono, Sam Darnold.
It's not going to be Baker either. Well, it's not going to be Baker either.
Be honest, it has a better chance of being Baker than
Sam
Darnold.
Baker Mayfield does have a better job.
Proves my point that Baker is better than Sam Darnold. Like, I don't get this. I don't get why people are like, oh.
I'm not disagreeing with you. Baker Mayfield is better than Sam Darnold. Sam Darnold should win the job.
Why?
Because he's already there.
Why wouldn't you start the better quarterback?
Because I'm a slightly sentimental guy, and Sam Darnold I don't think has ever really gotten a legitimately fair shot of being a quarterback of a good football team. Right? Last season he was hurt. He spent a lot of time hurt, and then down the line they bring back Cam, and it felt good. He didn't really get to see the field again after that. Right? He spent 3 years in New York, was dealing with injury, got mono, was seeing ghosts. That's a bad team. Sam Darnold's yet to get a shot at playing quarterback in the NFL for a good football team from start to finish. I just want to see that for saying. That's all. Because if we're being honest, because of all that Baker Mayfield has done, let's say Baker Mayfield underperforms, whatever you want to call that, underperforms here in Carolina this season, and he's gone. Baker Mayfield's still a former number 1 overall pick, and Baker Mayfield's won a playoff game. Someone's going to call for Baker. Whether he hits the free agent market or whether it's a trade for another 5th round pick or less, someone's going to call for Baker at some point, whether it's to be a starter or whether it's to be a backup. I don't know if Sam has that backup plan for him. And I feel like this is Sam's last shot, in my estimation, to the same way we all thought that Baker's year last year was Baker's really last shot of proving to the league and to the Browns that he deserved to get paid and be a starting quarterback. Sam's in that position this season. And it does say a lot that the Panthers went out and made this trade about how confident they are in Sam Darnold this season, about how Matt Rule is feeling about his job. But Baker Mayfield being a former number 1 overall pick, having been to the playoffs, having won a playoff game, right, having played some type of good football, he's going to get a job elsewhere, right? Jameis Winston got a job post-Buccaneers, right? Marcus Mariota has had a couple jobs post-Tennessee. Geno Smith has found, like, and these are all guys that were picked very, very high. And I know that Sam Darnold was picked number 3, but he was drafted by a really, really bad team who didn't have any talent, right? The Browns were a bad team, but they still had something. They still had Jarvis. They still had the defense, right? They brought in Odell. There was still something to work with in Cleveland. There was not much really to work with in New York, and because of that, Sam going to Carolina was going to be Sam. And you were there when the very first time we worked together was last year draft time on Justin's show, and I said that there's hope for Sam Darnold in Carolina because this would be his shot to prove that he's a good quarterback. And then he got hurt last season, so he didn't really get to prove that. And this season was going to be that season. So it's more of a sentimental pick for me of like give Sam the job because he needs the shot. Because Baker's going to get a job somewhere else. It might not be a starting job right away, but like Baker's slowly creeping into that Teddy Bridgewater, Tyrod Taylor era, like where we see Teddy now, where we saw Tyrod before he was kind of finished. Where like someone's going to call Baker Mayfield at the very least to be a backup with the potential to become a starter if something goes wrong. He'll always have that. I don't know if Sam's going to get another shot of any sort if he doesn't play this season, which is why I think you should give the job to Sam. And why maybe Sam wins the job outright, because I think maybe Sam recognized that, and maybe Sam's a slightly bit more motivated. I don't know.
As a football,
but Baker's going to win the job, though. I mean, if we're talking strictly football, Baker's going to win.
Exactly.
I know that.
I get it's a feel-good thing, maybe, but like, dude, like, come on, like you're trying.
No, I'm not denying.
Yeah,
Baker's going to win the job. I just want, as a Sam Darnold guy and as a guy that believes in second chances and think that Sam deserves one, I think he should win the job.
I just don't get behind the narrative that people give to quarterbacks. So like, oh, well, they never had a fair chance. Oh, boo-hoo. Like, I don't like, to be honest, fair. Like, I don't want to sound cold-hearted. Like, I don't care. People made this argument about Josh Rosen. Josh Rosen was nothing other than horrible as an NFL quarterback.
Yeah,
oh, we never got a fair chance.
No, he did. He was just not good.
Like, it doesn't matter.
I think the epitome of, like, I think you want to talk about a guy that never got a fair chance. I think the epitome of that would be Mitch Trubisky, because of the terrible coaching that he had to endure.
Yeah, but Mitch Trubisky actually had a winning record as a quarterback.
That's true.
That's what people don't remember. Like Sam Darnold.
Which is why I think Mitch Trubisky could potentially lead the Steelers if he's the long-term goal. He's not going to be, obviously. That's why they drafted Kenny Pickett. But Mitch Trubisky could maybe sneak the Steelers into the playoffs this season if all goes well. Possibly. Yeah. I don't know. I
like Mitch.
I love Mitch, and I'm a Packers fan. It's against my religion, but I love Mitch. This is a hoops episode, so let's dive right into the hoops. We're going to start now by talking about free agency. The free agency period has officially ended, right? So all the free agents, for the most part, are signed. Of course, we'll probably see some free agent periods or free agent signings down the line. But let's start with the losers of free agency first. Who do you have as being a loser of the free agency period this season?
All right, so I have 3 teams right now listed as losers. One is kind of the obvious, the Nets. You had arguably what could have possibly been the best historical offensive team in NBA history with James Harden, Kyrie Irving, and Kevin Durant, and you have nothing to show for it. Couldn't even make a conference finals. Enough said there. That's a loser. Loser also the Timberwolves. They got absolutely fleeced by the Jazz for an outdated player in Rudy Gobert. This trade would have only been good in 1970. That's it. In today's NBA, you spent 5 players, and you also gave up a pick swap and 4 firsts for Rudy Gobert, a guy that is basically useless offensively, is the most overrated defensive player in history because he guards only the paint. And when teams' offensive volumes are only coming from the perimeter, you have to be able to guard the perimeter, and he can't do that. He's actually terrible at that. So he's the most overrated defender in the history of the game. And now you also don't know what to do with Cat and him offensively, because Cat is going to have to play this glorified Brook Lopez role, which is going to very much so limit him, which is going to be like totally like weird. And Gobert's just going to stand there awkwardly in the post. And Ant's going to try to drive the lane, but Gobert's going to be clogging it all the freaking time. So there you go. You have that. You have an offensive schematic nightmare in Minnesota. But, hey, you made a splash. And then I have the Heat, mainly because they lost P.J. Tucker, and they need someone, and they haven't gotten anyone. Because let's be honest, with the way the East is right now, the Heat needs someone other than Bam and Jimmy. You can't win a championship with just Bam and Jimmy. You need to go get someone. You couldn't attract Bradley Beal out of Washington. That sucks. You need to go make a trade for someone. You can't even afford to get Kevin Durant. So you're kind of backed up against the wall in Miami where you're like, okay, we have a bunch of old players. We have Tyler Hero, though. Okay, whoa, scary. He makes mean bugs and is like 6th man of the year. Good for him, but he's not going to put you over the top in the East. So I say loser, Miami Heat, Timberwolves, and Nets.
The Timberwolves one is a no-brainer for me.
Yeah.
That's a disgustingly bad trade. That is, when we talk about some of the worst trades ever in the history of basketball, that is right up there because that's just really, 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 really bad. I'm not going to dive too much into that one because you've already given it. I feel like though, in a way, I think that the Milwaukee Bucks are losers a little bit. They didn't make any moves, and so this isn't like it's not that. I think the Bucks last season, I predicted at the end of the 2021 season that they weren't going to make it back to the finals. And we talked a lot about how the Suns probably weren't going to make it back. And listen, I know because of how great Giannis is and how he's obviously getting better that they will be back. But the Bucks, I feel like we've always kind of been accustomed to the Bucks making some kind of move that would just edge them just a little bit, whether it's a bench guy or whether it's like an undercover, like something. And they haven't done that. And I think in a way that's the field is getting shrunk a little bit because and we'll talk about this, I'm sure, in a second. James Harden has taken a $15 million pay cut to come back to Philly. So they're going to be able to, do some things, right? The Celtics made a big splash by getting Malcolm Brogdon, which I thought was massive for them and what they're trying to do. Like the Bucks heading into last season, I think were far and away, obviously, the best team in the East and had a strong argument to be one of the best teams in basketball. That's not the case anymore. And I think what we saw last season is because are the Bucks going to be able to keep making deep playoff runs with just Giannis? And the answer to that question is no. You're going to need Chris Middleton and or some other guy that in the event that Chris Middleton goes down can step up and take that role offensively. Jrue Holiday's not that guy because he's a defensive guy. And I love Jrue Holiday. I think he's spectacular. But he's not an offensive guy. And so you can't expect him to do that. It's nice they brought back Bobby Portis. I thought that's the best thing that they did. But can you rely on Bobby Portis consistently in big games? No. You can't really rely on Brook Lopez consistently in big games. You're not relying on Pat Connaughton and these other guys. So the Bucks have always, for the past couple of seasons, kind of made like these sneaky moves that are really underrated that make a difference, i.e. signing PJ Tucker 2 years ago on the road to the championship. That was a very sneaky move that I don't think a lot of people really respected until you look back and you say, oh, well, PJ Tucker is this hustle guy. And then all of a sudden, PJ Tucker leaves Milwaukee to go to Miami, and all the things that we should have been saying about PJ Tucker going to Milwaukee, that's what everybody was saying about PJ Tucker going to Miami. So the Bucks have always been known for making one of those sly, sneaky moves that are really underrated but work beautifully with what they're trying to do, and they didn't do that. And that's why I have them as losers. But the clear loser is the Timberwolves because you have traded away a lot. You've traded away a whole bunch of stuff for nothing. And Rudy Gobert said that he's here to take the Timberwolves to the finals. I'll be honest, the only way the Timberwolves are going to be in the finals is if Rudy Gobert buys the whole team tickets. It's just not happening. It's not happening. Like it's not. I'm so sorry to be the one to tell you. And if there are any Minnesota Timberwolves fans listening to this, I doubt that there are. I didn't even know the Timberwolves had fans until the play-in game this season. But if there are any of you guys listening to this, I apologize, but someone's got to break this bad news to you. You're not going to the finals with Rudy Gobert being your big. Let's go to the other side, right? Who are the winners of free agency this year?
Well, first off, I want to start off with Zion Williamson. Bro has played in 85 of like 120 possible games that he could have played in his NBA career, and he signs a 5-year, $193 million deal that could be $231 million. For
3 more games, either 3 more or 3 less games than Greg Oden did in his first 3 years.
Yeah.
We hated Greg Oden.
Yeah, well, let's be honest, though. What Zion has done in his time in the NBA has been better than what Greg Oden has done. Infinitely.
Of course.
Yeah, I mean, Zion, with all due respect to Zion, he is the only player to average 25 points on 60% shooting in NBA history at the moment. So what he's doing when he's on the court is living up to his name. It's his problem is getting on the court. So I hope that he's healthy this year. But that's a big dub right there, obviously, getting that bag. And then I have the Celtics. Malcolm Brogdon. Finally, they get a point guard that can actually facilitate and move the ball around and get people set up. You don't have to rely on Jason Tatum or Marcus Smart to kind of set up the offense. You can actually just have Jason Tatum, who's very good at getting open off ball, kind of focus on like more like a Carmelo Anthony role where it's like you get the ball, you score, bro. Be a scorer. Be a scorer. You don't have to worry about facilitating. You don't have to worry about doing none of this other crap because we actually have a point guard, a two-way point guard as well, in Malcolm Brogdon that fits into their defensive role or defensive scheme as well there. So I love that move by the Celtics. I think that's kind of one of those moves that could get a team that was really good last year over the hump this year. And then next winner was also a loser, the Brooklyn Nets. Brooklyn, yes, it didn't work out. It didn't work out. And at the end of the day, you have to cut your losses and move on. What can you do, though? You could trade Kyrie and Kevin Durant. It was never going to work. Like at this point, it's run its course. You were not going to get over the hump with just Kyrie and Kevin Durant. You also couldn't attract enough of the low-key free agent signings to get yourself over the hump in the East. Because at the end of the day, those are the guys that win championships. And you couldn't attract that because no one really wanted to play with Kyrie and KD because of all the uncertainty surrounding them and whatnot. And Kyrie's really weird. And so you could trade them and you could get young assets and be right back to where you were before you got them. You were almost a playoff team. I think the Nets actually were a playoff team when they went to the bubble, when they had Karis LeVert and they had Jared Allen. They had young assets and picks that they could have had and used to develop young players, but they traded it all away. And all of that's gone now. Now you can get it back. And you can reset yourself and prime yourself to be in a position where in the next 5, 6, 7 years, you can rebuild yourself to a young team to compete in the East, such as the Cavs have done, such as these other teams have done, such as the Thunder are doing right now. The Pistons are in the process of doing it as well. So you have, while it's a door that's closing on the Nets, you also have a ton of different doors opening in Brooklyn.
So I'm so glad you mentioned the Brooklyn Nets because ironically, we can talk about the Celtics. I'm not going to do that. And we can talk about some of the other winners. I have one massive winner from free agency, and it's going to come as a shock. And I have already mentally prepared myself for the possibility of having to go through the rest of the show by myself because it might just make Payton leave, but it's fine. Ladies and gentlemen, it's been a minute, but I feel like because of how just out of a left field this is, I think it's only right. So let's get into it. Hot take with Marcus. It's back. This is going to be a spicy one out of left field. I think no one's going to see this coming. It's very simple to me, I think, who the biggest winner of free agency is. I'll put a caveat on it. If KD and Kyrie do get traded from the Brooklyn Nets, Ben Simmons is the biggest winner of free agency. Here's why.
What?
Here's why. Listen, here's why Ben Simmons will be the biggest winner. Okay?
Oh my gosh.
Ben Simmons sat out in Philadelphia. He didn't want to play in Philly when all he had to do was work on a shot or attempt a jump shot. Whatever. That's fine. We all recognize how good of a player Ben Simmons is when he's on the court, right? Very versatile defender, can guard the 1 through the 5, is a very good passer. He just can't shoot. Ben Simmons, if KD and Kyrie get traded from Brooklyn, has a chance to be the centerpiece of a rebuild, and it's very easy to build around Ben Simmons. All you need to do is surround him with shooters and good defenders. That has a potential to be a playoff team in the Brooklyn Nets, and if all goes well and Brooklyn does it right, Ben Simmons can be the face of a rebuilding, playoff contending Brooklyn Nets. Now, it's a long shot, and it sounds crazy, and I get it, but this is a guy in Ben Simmons who is a knockoff Rookie of the Year because he won the Rookie of the Year in his second season in the NBA, and I think that rule sucks, by the way. But he has on his resume, whatever. He is a guy that in his last season in Philadelphia, I thought should have won the Defensive Player of the Year because of how good he played defensively, not Rudy Gobert. It is very easy to build around Ben Simmons. And what I really think Ben Simmons needs is the trust of an organization and the faith of a fan base and something where like he can be the guy and doesn't have to worry about anyone else coming in and stealing that from him. If Kyrie is gone and if KD is gone, Ben Simmons doesn't have that pressure because it's just him. And unless you're bringing another superstar, Ben Simmons will be the de facto best player on the team. And here's the thing. As crazy as it sounds, there was a stretch of games a couple years ago where the Philadelphia 76ers went on a 16-game win streak without Joel Embiid, and Ben Simmons was really the only guy on the court at that time. So we've seen that a Ben Simmons-led team with the right pieces around him can produce some form of long-term success. If KD and Kyrie get traded from the Brooklyn Nets and he's the only guy left, because it's very easy to build around Ben Simmons, because Ben Simmons will be the focal point of the offense, because everything will flow through Ben Simmons, we could potentially see the best of Ben Simmons in Brooklyn, maybe. And I think that's a big win for a guy in Ben Simmons, who, although he did run away from the spotlight in Philadelphia, would be kind of pushed back into the spotlight, but on his terms. And Ben Simmons likes to do things on his terms and his terms only. And I think that'd be a massive confidence boost for Ben Simmons if he is the guy that is being built around, instead of being a guy that is being used to build around someone else or someone else's. So yeah, I think Ben Simmons is a winner in free agency. That's only if KD and Kyrie get traded. If not, then just forget everything I just said. I will die on that hill.
All right, this is gonna sound like a casual take, but like Ben Simmons is trash, bro. Like, let's be honest. Like, Ben Simmons, and notice how when you said
he's trash offensively.
Notice how when you said he could be a Ben Simmons run playoff contender. Where's the title contenders, bro? You can't win a title. You can't even.
I'm not crazy.
Whoa,
I'm not crazy.
Yeah,
you're not winning a chip building around.
Exactly. So,
but what I'm saying is, but what I'm saying is for Ben, I think what Ben Simmons really needs right now is a confidence boost. You know what I mean? Like, I think the way that things ended for him with Philly, as far as how he perceives it, where, you know, his co-star Joel Embiid is throwing him under the bus, and then his coach and Doc Rivers is throwing him under the bus, and all these fans are turning on them. Whether you're a fan of the Sixers or not, and whether you think that it was warranted or not, that is shattering for someone of Ben Simmons' caliber, who is clearly very sensitive, and at one point thought that he was going to be the focal point of a potential title contending team. I don't think that Ben Simmons at this point in his career is going to be enough to lead you to a title, because he can't shoot the ball and has an unwillingness to do so. If he did, we'd be talking about something completely different. But looking at Ben Simmons and what he is right now, if Ben Simmons steps back onto the basketball court and he's in his sound mind, right, and he is the guy on the team as far as everything is kind of built around him, I think that's a confidence boost for him moving forward of like, hey, there is an organization out here that is willing to trust me, right? Like there is a fan base out here that won't turn on me on the drop of a dime or whatever, or when I make mistakes. I think that's what Ben needs. Is Ben needs to be in a place where he can be confident playing basketball. And I think that's why he was so looking forward to playing with KD and Kyrie, because he would have been confident playing basketball. He really believed that he would have fit in seamlessly with them, right? Now, if KD and Kyrie don't get traded and Ben Simmons joins the team, it'll be interesting to see what that looks like. But if Ben Simmons is the guy in Brooklyn and it's just him, and Brooklyn makes an attempt to kind of build around him and kind of get them into the playoffs, I think that does a lot for Ben's confidence as it pertains to, I can be the focal point of a basketball team that is moving in a positive direction. Of course, because he has an unwillingness to shoot the basketball, I can't say that they're going to be a title contender, obviously. But if you put enough pieces around Ben Simmons, you could be looking at a team that is making the playoffs on the low end from 5 to 8. Which for Ben Simmons, whose confidence has clearly been shattered since the last time we saw him play basketball, that would be massive for Ben. And then maybe we start back on the road to potentially seeing Ben Simmons shoot a shot. That's all. I think Ben Simmons needs a confidence boost, and if he's the only one in Brooklyn, that's how he would get it.
The problem is this, right? And I get what you're saying. You have a point. But the problem is that Ben Simmons doesn't have this. I never seen it, even when Ben Simmons was a rookie and he was actually really good. And when he was, really looking like he was going to be a young star, he never had that fire in him, bro. It never felt like Ben Simmons. Like, this is going to sound so cliche, bro, but sometimes dude just got to have that dog in him, bro. Yeah. Sometimes you just got to have that just, I'm going to go get it. And Ben Simmons just never had it. And that's why Philly turned their back on him so much, was because Ben Simmons is extremely gifted. Obviously, that's why he was taken number 1 overall. He was well worth the number 1 overall pick. Like, he has all the tools. They haven't really gone away. They're still there. And he just never has been able to tap into that. I don't know if it's a mental block. I don't know if it's just the fact that he doesn't have the desire to do so. Maybe some dudes, like, if we're being honest, some pro athletes don't really enjoy the sport that they're playing. They just do it because it's a blessing to be able to have that talent, and they're just going to take the money and their family is going to be good. You know what I mean? So sometimes that's just the case. And I always just felt like with Ben Simmons, he was just more worried about being a celebrity than a basketball player. And if you're doing that in Philly, oh my goodness, Philly will freaking tear you apart in ways that you couldn't imagine if you're out here focusing on dating Kardashians instead of your jump shot. And that's what Ben Simmons was doing. So while I think you have a point, this is a case where I have to see it to believe it. I have to see that Ben Simmons has a desire to get better. I have to see that Ben Simmons has a desire to grow as a basketball player. And until I see that, I'm not sold.
That's fair. I mean, I am in a class of 1 here, and I'll post this on TikTok and get all types of, you don't know ball. That's fine. I will die on this hill. I think if Ben Simmons comes up and wants to be and plays and is more focused about basketball than anything else, it'll be a good confidence boost for him to see an organization and a fan base support him in a way that I guess he felt that the Brooklyn Nets or the Philadelphia 76ers organization and their fan base did not, especially on the back end of his time. Let's move on now to Summer League, because it is that time of year where we get to see all the rookies and second-year players kind of duke it out in the Summer League. There's a lot going on. New changes being made to the Summer League for the first time in the history. The winners of the Summer League will receive championship rings. We saw Chet in his first performance, and Twitter went nuts. We saw Paolo and Jabari do battle a couple days ago. Twitter went nuts. Cam Thomas is going nuts right now, and Twitter is going nuts. That's just kind of what happens when these rookies and young guys kind of duke it out in the Summer League. Do you think that we put too much stock into Summer League performances?
I don't think so. It's fun. Let's be honest. Hockey's done. Football's done. The draft is over. The NFL is kind of settling down. No one wants to sit here and watch baseball. Let's watch some. Let's get hyped over some Summer League games, bro. Why not? You know what I mean? It's a lot like everything in basketball. Like, part of what makes basketball great is everything's hyped up. High school players are hyped up. You see middle school players sometimes get hyped up on social media. It's a hype sport. Basketball is a hype sport. That's the whole point of basketball. And that's kind of what makes it great. And I have no problem with it. I think that if anyone is like holding with so much weight, like, oh my gosh, like Chet's going to be a Hall of Famer, 3-time NBA champion because he had 6 blocks against Taco Fall, who doesn't have a post move in his bag at all. His only talent is being tall. Then you're overreacting. But if you're saying, okay, this is a good little thing for young stars to showcase their talent and kind of adjust to NBA life a little bit and just go play some basketball and have fun with it, then yeah, it's a good thing. I don't have a problem with Twitter going nuts over it. To be honest, in the sports world, there's not a lot to be going nuts over right now. So why not have some fun? I mean, these guys are balling out. There's some young stars here that could potentially be, multiple-time NBA champions one day. You never know. I would say this. Lonzo Ball looked like he was going to be the best point guard in the history of the game in the Summer League, and just totally sucked his rookie season. So it's like, you take it with a grain of salt. It does mean a little something, though. Like, I feel like if Chet was playing horrible, I'd be like, whoa. Or like if Paolo was playing horrible, I'd be like, whoa. You know what I mean? But they're handling their business. If you're a top pick, you better look like a top pick out there. And that's what they're doing. That's how they're supposed to play. So you take it at face value. The top pick looks like the best player on the floor. That's how it's supposed to be.
Let's switch gears. Let's talk about some championship odds, right? We are oddly enough, the NBA season is like crazy enough right around the corner. And we've seen, we've seen obviously the Warriors have won the championship and all that good stuff. So I've got a list of, I believe it's 8 teams here that we're going to go through, scale of 1 to 10, how likely you think it is that they win the championship next season, and what their ceiling is. We'll start with the defending champion Golden State Warriors. How likely are they to repeat as NBA champions next season?
I would say for the Warriors, about a 5. They lost 2 very key role players in Otto Porter and Gary Payton. They're gone. So that kind of takes a hit there. So I would say 5 for the Warriors to repeat. Plus, you have other teams that could be healthy, especially in the East now. If Malcolm Brogdon fits well in Boston, if Chris Middleton really makes a difference and the Bucks go back, like there's a lot of competition in the NBA. If you're losing role players, you're losing a lot of value on your team.
What's their ceiling?
The Warriors' ceiling?
Are the finals still their ceiling?
Definitely.
I'm gonna give them an 8. A lot of it has to do with the fact that the Golden State Warriors, every time they make the playoffs, they make it to the finals. Mm-hmm. They've lost 2 playoff series in the Steph, Clay, Dre era. 2016 and 3-1 comeback, 2019 to the Raptors with all the injuries. So it seems like they're almost a virtual lock to make the playoffs. Here is why, while I recognize that the loss of Otto Porter and Gary Payton could cause problems, here's why I'm not too concerned about that. And that is because I am probably the only non-Golden State Warrior fan that feels this way. And if not, there's very few of us. I have high hopes. They also lost Juan Toscano-Anderson to the Lakers. But I have high hopes for Moses Moody and Jonathan Kuminga. They will get those minutes. Those would be the 2 next men up. I think also, too, though, what's important is when you look at how well Andrew Wiggins played last season, especially in the playoffs and even more specifically in the finals, right? With the one thing I kept saying about Andrew Wiggins was he was the one guy that you can rely on offensively and defensively to produce on both sides of the ball at a consistent level, right? All the time. Steph you can always rely on him offensively. You can always rely on other guys defensively, but he's the only on the team that you can rely on offensively and defensively. And as KD said, this is a wings league. And a wing that can be really good offensively or solid offensively and be solid defensively is a premium in the NBA. And if you have one, you're in a good spot. The Warriors potentially have 3 of them if Moses Moody and Jonathan Kuminga pan out the way that we expect them to, especially now they're likely going to be getting more minutes with 3 players gone off the roster. Obviously, they're also going to be bringing back James Wiseman. James Wiseman's going to be playing ball next season, given that he stays healthy. They've liked his production and how he was developing over the course of the season when he was in the summer league, or not summer league, when he was in the G League. And he'll probably get some run in the G League next season before he really gets called up back to the main roster. But the other thing too, though, is when you look at, and I said this on MJ on our guy MJ show the other day, and I'll say it again here. If we're really being honest about the state of the Western Conference specifically, because your point about the East is fair, but we're talking about the Western Conference specifically, there are really only 2 bigs in the West that you are concerned about. It's Nikola Jokic, the 2-time reigning MVP, and Anthony Davis when he's healthy, right? I don't care what anybody says. No one cares about Karl Anthony Towns, right? And Rudy Gobert is not a threat offensively, and he's barely a threat defensively. Outside of that, there isn't really a big, and I mean like a bona fide big, not like a Christian Woods guy who he plays the 5, but he's really just a tall power forward. He's not really like what you would think of when you think of a center, but he plays it very well, right? Even DeAndre Ayton to a degree, he is a big and he is the center, but number one, we don't know where DeAndre Ayton's going to be playing ball next season. Number 2, most importantly though, DeAndre Ayton kind of lacks that physicality that traditional bigs have. So if we're being honest, there's really only 1 big in the NBA or in the Western Conference, and the Warriors got past him on their road to the chip. Now, I understand that he didn't have his other 2 best players in Michael Porter Jr. and Jamal Murray, but the Warriors have thrived on small ball really throughout the course of this dynastic run of sorts. I mean, yeah, they had Andrew Bogut, they had JaVale McGee in there as well, but for the most part, the Warriors haven't really had a bona fide big man that is a threat that you're worried about offensively, right? Their big men have kind of just been glorified role players that play starters minutes, that are just there to play good defense down low and get rebounds. If that's what we're talking about, where the Warriors can thrive on that with no real opposition in the paint, it's hard for me to not expect them to at least go back to the finals. And then we're talking about, obviously, the Bucks, if Chris Middleton really does make that difference, as you mentioned, or maybe the Sixers, because those 2 teams have a big. Embiid is a big. I think Embiid's the best center in basketball. And even though Giannis plays the 4 or he's listed as a 3, if Giannis lines up at the 5, yikes. for the Warriors. And even if he doesn't, he's still yikes for the Warriors because he's so physical. So that's where I look at it and I say, if we're talking about a situation where the Warriors are going to be playing a lot of small ball, which is what they do anyway, it's hard for me not to expect them to at least make it back to the finals. And I would say, I mean, given the matchup, given what we saw out of the Celtics last season, if it's not the Celtics or the Bucks, I don't see the Warriors having a problem with any of the other teams in the Eastern Conference if they were to match up with them in the finals next season. So, I mean, I'll give it 8. I mean, and again, it's hard to bet against the Warriors winning a championship because every time they make it to the finals or make it to the playoffs, it seems like in 2.5 months' time, they're raising another banner.
Tons of pedigree there. And you know that when they get in the playoffs, they're going to perform. I forgot about James Wiseman. And when you brought up James Wiseman, he has the potential to be the best center of any of their teams that have been recent. Because, I mean,
absolutely,
they haven't really
we're talking about Barbosa. We're talking about JaVale McGee on the way backside of his prime. We're talking about Andrew Bogut.
Yeah.
If James Wiseman pans out the way that we all expect him to, he would easily be the best center that they've had on this.
So I'll change it from 5 to 6.5. It's hard to repeat. And if you're asking me if they're going to get back to the finals, I'd say an 8. I would say they're certainly, without a doubt, the team to beat in the West. But if you're asking me going to win, 6.5.
That's fair. Let's talk about the other half of the finals matchup, the Boston Celtics. On a scale of 1 to 10, how likely are they to win the championship next season? And what's their ceiling if they don't?
Man, this is rough, man. I want to see what Malcolm Brogdon does. I want to see what Malcolm Brogdon brings to them. However, I am a little bit. I know I was on a bunch of shows after the finals, and I said let's not overreact about Jason Tatum here. But I'm worried a little bit about how, because it could go two ways. He could either take this finals loss and build upon it and get better this offseason, or it could get in his head. And all of a sudden you start having playoff struggles. So I would say with Boston, I'm not moving this, and I'm saying a 5. Because I don't think that it's hard to go back, and I think that they shouldn't have even been there if Chris Middleton would have been healthy. I think that Milwaukee would have been there. So now you're going to have to go through a presumably healthy Milwaukee Bucks team, a Bulls team that is going to be healthy from start to finish this year. And like you said, Philly's going to be rough. Philly's going to be a hard team to beat. James Harden is going to get acclimated in the offense there, and he's probably going to be feeling a lot better than he was last season, I would assume. I don't think James Harden's totally washed yet, and I think that he's finally, for the first time in his career, got his mind set up on, okay, I'm not going to average 30, but I'm going to win a chip. And that's kind of that's what's extremely important from James Harden. So I think Philly's going to be dangerous. I think obviously Milwaukee's going to be dangerous. I think Chicago's a team that is also going to be dangerous as well with everyone healthy. So I would say 5. I'm not super confident in Boston going back.
Let's say 4. I'm saying a 4 because while I love the acquisition of Malcolm Brogdon, I don't like what that means for Marcus Smart. Marcus Smart is a shooting guard. Marcus Smart came into the league as a shooting guard. Mm-hmm. The reason Marcus Smart is playing at the 1 is because he can't shoot.
Yep.
And he's just better at passing. And, they end up bringing in Jaylen Brown, so he just gets moved to the 1 because Jaylen Brown can shoot. And he can play better defense. The only way that the Malcolm Brogdon acquisition works is if Malcolm Brogdon is playing the 2. And Malcolm Brogdon, I don't know if the Celtics are looking at that and making that decision. Because the Celtics the Celtics aren't successful with Marcus Smart at the 2. They're just not. It's a liability offensively. I think what you'd have to have is a starting lineup of Marcus Smart at the 1, Brogdon at the 2, Brown at the 3, Tatum at the 4, Robert Williams at the 5, and Horford starts coming off the bench with Derek White and all those guys that were coming off the bench this season. That is the only way that this works, in my mind, if you're the Boston Celtics. If you're going to try to there's no need to reinvent the wheel. Jaylen Brown's a good defender, and what is Jaylen Brown? I'll look it up right now. What is he like? 6? Jaylen Brown's 6'6". He can play the 3. Jason Tatum is about 6'7", 6'8". He can put them at a 4. Robert Williams, although he would be an undersized 5, we saw is extremely athletic and can play extremely good defense. And he would have been Defense Player of the Year if he didn't get hurt. They gave it to Marcus Smart, but he would have been deployed if he didn't get hurt and miss a portion of the games, right? And I think he'll have an exceptional season, especially defensively. Now what you have is Al Horford coming off the bench. So if that's the case, if Brogdon's going to be the 2, I'm very confident that the Celtics can at least make it back. But because I don't see that happening, I'm just hesitant. So I'm going to say a 4 because, as you mentioned, although I would have had the Celtics either way, you're right. It's possible that the Bucks would have beat the Celtics in the second round if they had Chris Middleton. But also what's more important is both of those second series, the semifinals and the conference finals, they didn't have to go to 7. Those series were not supposed to go to 7. Like, I know that Giannis is acknowledged by most of the best in the world, but when you don't have your closer, you pushing a team to 7 games is great for you, especially if you end up losing. That Bucks team should have been done in 5 or 6, and the Heat absolutely should have been done in 5 or 6. They had no business hanging around that late. So the Jason Tatum point you make is a great one about whether or not this is going to get in his head in a good way or a negative way, but also, too, the Celtics were the worst team in crunch time.
Yep.
In the postseason last season. Malcolm Brogdon's not going to fix that. That's an execution issue. That's a coaching issue. No, I don't care who you add to the team. That's a coaching and an execution thing. So they had one good crunch time game. It was game 1 of the finals when they went lights out in the fourth quarter. So I'm a little hesitant. I'm going to give them a 4, which is 1 less than you. But that is if worst case scenario happens with the roster. And unfortunately, I feel like you don't bring in Malcolm Brogdon unless you have him at the 1. The only other option would be you play him off the bench with starter minutes. I don't know if that's going to be a good option either. I feel like best case scenario is because Big Al is getting older. He played great, but he is getting older. I think you want to limit his minutes as much as possible because he can be very useful down the stretch in games, as we saw this past season. So I'm going to give him a 4. And I love how great I love the Celtics turnaround. I don't mean to sound like I'm hating on the Celtics or anything, but if we're just being realistic, it's not. The East is tough. Like, it's not as tough as the West, but it's tough. The Sixers are looking like they're going to be getting better. The Heat are still the Heat. The Cavs, I know they missed the playoffs, but they're going to be a play-in team, right? The Pistons are looking like they could potentially make some noise. The Hornets keep getting better. Like, there's just a lot of teams that could potentially cause problems. The Knicks added Jalen Brunson. They could maybe sneak their way back into the playoffs. Everyone's loving the DeJounte Murray to Atlanta. There's so much going on in the East. It's not a top heavy. It's not as top heavy as the West. Like, there's depth across the Eastern Conference where you could see some young teams sneak in and cause some problems, much like the Celtics did last season. Being a young team, sneak in and cause a lot of problems. It's not that far fetched.
Yeah, no, I like that you brought up the fit with Malcolm Brogdon and Marcus Smart because I was thinking about that. Like, it's almost like a puzzle in my head, and it's the same thing with the DeJounte Murray and Trae Young thing, except I think it's actually worse. Malcolm Brogdon, I think, helps them out a lot. I think they overall got better as a team, but I can't in my head envision how they're gonna fit together. Because I was like, well, maybe you could bring Malcolm Brogdon off the bench, like you said, with starter minutes. And I was like, but then what? Like, that doesn't even make any sense. Why would you trade for him to begin with? Like, you traded for him to be a point guard because Marcus Smart isn't a point guard. But then he's also not even really a good shooting guard. So it's like, offensively, you're going to take a hit. But like you said, Malcolm Brogdon might have to play the 2. And there's a lot of things going on in the East right now where, like, they're getting players, but it's like, okay, but like, where do they fit in? Like the DeJounte Murray trade, like this Malcolm Brogdon trade. So it'll be interesting to see how everything works out. But that's why I'm not super confident in the Celtics, is because the East is, while the star power might not be as much as the West, the intensity, I feel like, is so much more in the East as opposed to the West. Like, the West is very top heavy, if we're being honest. The West, you have like 5 teams. Everyone else, okay, you could duke it out for who gets the last few play-in spots. The
But it won't
East,
matter.
though, the East is like you'll have like winning records through all the play-in teams as well, and that's where it's like I'm not confident in the Celtics to make it out of that.
So we mentioned the Bucks, and the Bucks won the championship in 2021. What are the odds the Bucks potentially get their second chip in 3 years this season?
I would say 7. I'm a big Bucks guy. I think that a lot of people forget that Chris Middleton is essential for them in terms of winning.
Absolutely.
And I know that you brought them up as a biggest loser, and I get that. And I understand your point behind it because they didn't do something. They just kind of brought everyone back. They brought back Bobby Portis. They brought back Pat Connaughton. They just kind of brought the gang back together, which is important in itself.
I will say, and I will say that because just that is a small win in itself because it looked like Bobby was almost out the door in Milwaukee. So to bring him back is a win. So you're right about that one.
Yeah. So it's like they just kind of kept the band together. I think Milwaukee's banking on the fact that the reason why they weren't in the finals last year was the injury to Chris Middleton. We've seen this recipe work for Milwaukee. I think Giannis is the best player in the world, if not most dominant player in the NBA right now. I feel like that's hard to debate, the most dominant part. Maybe not best, but most dominant's hard to debate.
Oh, he is undoubtedly most dominant. There's no debating that. Yeah.
So when you have that, and Giannis also has another aspect where he has that killer instinct. Like I said with Ben Simmons. Ben Simmons doesn't have that dog. Giannis has that dog in him. And he's gonna make sure he scores, and he's gonna make sure he puts the team on his back no matter what to win games. That's why they went to 7 with Boston when they had Chris Middleton injured. That's why Giannis is Giannis. He had nothing, and he was able to become the best player in the NBA from starting off with absolutely nothing. He was literally walking to games when he didn't have a car. I mean, it's an unbelievable story in Giannis. So that's why I have faith in the Bucks. You have a leader in Giannis, a guy who has it. He's the most dominant player in the NBA now. You have a great defensive point guard in Drew Holiday. You have Brook Lopez, who could sometimes really stretch the floor and clear space for Giannis to get to the basket. Then you also have a bunch of other role players, like Pat Connaughton can come in and shoot. Bobby Portis comes in sometimes and he shoots the lights out. Like, they have the role players, they have the star players. Now they just need the health, and I think that's what held them back last year. So I would give them a 7 to win the championship.
I'll be honest. I say this all the time. I usually give my pick in August, but right now, if everything holds true with what's going on in the NBA, I have the Bucks and the Warriors meeting in the finals next season. I'm giving the Bucks an 8 right there with the Warriors. And I know there are some people that remember me from my earlier days and how hard I was on Giannis, and while I don't still think that while I still don't think Giannis is the best player in the world. It is hard to debate that he's not the most dominant player in the world, as you mentioned. And Giannis Antetokounmpo is the most dominant player in basketball. That's easy. The argument can be there. Again, like I said, I don't think that it would have mattered, but there's a strong argument to be made that if Chris Middleton's there in the second round, the Bucks are in the finals, maybe winning the chip again this past season. So I'm going to give him an 8 for that. It's going to be interesting to see them play basketball. I do still think they're the best team in the Eastern Conference, but like I said earlier when I was talking about them being my loser, you can always rely on the Bucks to make that one sneaky move that no one values, that no one cares about, and then it comes in and it ends up being that one difference. And when they won the chip 2 years ago, it was bringing in PJ Tucker. They didn't really make that move this season, and I think that could potentially keep the gap in the field a lot closer to them. I do still think they're the best team in the East, though.
But do remember that move can also happen mid-season for a trade.
It could.
And that's a very common thing, especially with title contenders come the trade deadline. They go out and they get a role player, and it kind of gets them over the top. I mean, we see LeBron James does it every single year.
Yeah, it's like he's blowing up the team every year. In fact, he did blow up the team at the trade deadline one year, and it was insane.
Yeah.
Let's go back to the West and just follow the trend one more time. Let's talk about the team that the Bucks beat 2 years ago to win the championship. That's the Phoenix Suns. It's looking like they're coming back next season without DeAndre Ayton. It's looking like that's what's going to happen. What are the odds the Suns win a championship next season?
This is all dependent on if Kevin Durant gets traded to them or not.
We'll save that for later. We'll save that one for later.
Okay.
Let's just assume there's no KD and this is just the Suns roster as it is.
Okay. And no DA and no replacement for DA. Like DA is just gone.
Yep.
Okay.
Because they can't trade for him they can't trade him at this point because he's not signed.
No, but they could do it. I was hearing rumors of a signing trade with Indiana for Miles Turner, which would be good for them.
So let's do that. Let's say they do a signing trade for Miles Turner and Miles Turner doing it.
Okay. All right. Then I would say probably about a 5. I'm not confident in their ability to get past Golden State. But I would be confident in them to make the Western Conference Finals. I don't think that what happened last year is going to happen again, even though it kind of seems like it's the history of Chris Paul-led teams. But I understand that as human beings, we're all supposed to recognize patterns. That's what we're made to do, whether we like it or not. It's instinctual. But I try to steer away from that as much as possible and just say, okay, it's just a certain circumstance and whatnot, or Chris Paul might just be getting unlucky. Maybe it's a pattern.
Maybe it's Scott.
Phoenix is really good, really young, and really deep. And I feel like that has so much, and they have great coaching. Monty Williams is a great coach. So you have an old veteran point guard in Chris Paul. You have a young star in Devin Booker. I'm not ready to call him a superstar yet, but you have a young star in Devin Booker. Mikal Bridges, lockdown wing. He's like Andrew Wiggins, but not as athletic and not as good offensively. Then you also have guys on the bench. Cam Johnson, great role player, great young role player. Cam Payne, great young role player. And then if you're adding Miles Turner to that, you have a nice center as well that's very good at defending the paint. And he's way more physical and plays way harder than DeAndre Ayton does. DeAndre Ayton lets me down all the time because I think he's good because he is good, but then he doesn't have the dog in him. He doesn't have the dog in him, and he just plays like a wimp sometimes. So Miles Turner certainly doesn't do that. So if you be adding an edge to them, I just don't know how they get past Golden State because I feel like Golden State would just destroy them on the perimeter. Like they do to almost anyone, really. So I would say 5 for Phoenix. Not as high as Golden State, but I would have them second in the West.
Even a 2. And it's not even a Suns thing. It's a Western Conference thing. Okay. You're not confident that they can get past the Warriors. I'm not either. I'm also not confident they can get past the Grizzlies if they match with the Grizzlies. I don't know if they get past the Nuggets if they match with the Nuggets. I don't think they'd get past the Clippers if they match up with the Clippers next season. There are a lot of teams this season that are toss-up teams for the Suns in a 7-game series. The Mavericks, despite losing Jalen Brunson, I would say got better despite losing Jalen Brunson because they assessed the need. They got better at what they needed, which was some presence down low. And Christian Woods is going to be a reliable number 2 option, I think. I don't think the Suns get past the Mavericks. Easily, anyway. There's a lot of question marks about the Suns. And as much as I think that Devin Booker is a solid player, I agree with you, he's not a superstar. And as much as I really want to see Chris Paul finally get that ring before he hangs it up, this is not going to be his season. I think the closest he got to that was when he was in the finals. The closest he got to winning the chip was when he was up 2-0 against the Milwaukee Bucks. They couldn't shut the door. I don't think they're getting back. I don't think the Phoenix Suns are going to the finals next season. I'm hesitant to say this, but I'm leaning towards believing that they're not going to make it to the conference finals next season. There's a lot going on in the West. And unless they do get Kevin Durant, which that would obviously change things.
Yeah.
I'm going to give them a 2. Let's stay in the West. Let's talk about the Clippers, right? The Clippers are going to be likely getting back Kawhi Leonard this season, coming off of not playing at all last season. They still have Paul George. They brought in John Wall after he got bought out by the Rockets. So they kind of have somewhat of a big 3, kind of not really. They do still have the depth. They've got Ty Lue, who I think is the second best coach in basketball behind Monty Williams. Actually, I'll take it back. Ty Lue's the best coach in basketball, I believe. And Monty Williams is great, but I love Tyrone. I love Ty Lue with all my heart. What are the odds the Clippers finally? I'm not even going to say win a championship. What are the odds the Clippers finally make it to the finals? Because they've yet to do that since they've been they've yet to make the conference finals since they've been in practice. But what are the odds that the Clippers win a championship next season?
Are we going win a championship or make the finals? Win a championship? Okay.
Yeah, win a championship.
4, because you have some. I honestly am more confident in Denver right now than I am in the Clippers.
We'll get to Denver in a second.
And I just feel like, okay, all right, maybe history does repeat itself. You know what I'm saying? And I like the move for John Wall because that's perfect of what they needed. They needed a guy, and John Wall doesn't have to do a lot offensively, which is good. He just has to distribute, and he actually is very good at that.
Very good at that.
Very good.
He's also statistically one of the best defenders of the point guard position the game has ever seen.
Yep. And if he still can bring that physicality for at least down the stretch in the playoffs, the Clippers are going to be really good. I just haven't seen Kawhi in a long time. And the way that Kawhi is, I mean, some people probably forget that Kawhi is even in the NBA. I mean, it's just, we haven't seen them play together for a while. I bet you, I wouldn't be surprised if this is the media narrative. The Clippers start off rocky and everyone's like, uh-oh. Because they haven't played together in a while. It's going to take a while for them to come back, but they're going to be a really good team. The West is going to be so tight this year, especially at the top, and I just don't see them getting past the Warriors. I don't see them getting past the Suns either if the Suns are fully healthy and they, like I said, do that sign and trade for Miles Turner. And especially if they have Kevin Durant, I don't see them getting past them. But that's a long shot in itself. So I would say 4 for the Clippers to win the NBA championship.
Do you think the Clippers have a solid shot of making the finals, though?
Definitely. I like now that Reggie Jackson can come off the bench.
Yeah.
Because he's going to have because Reggie Jackson can come off the bench and still get you 20 off the bench. Like, Reggie Jackson might be a candidate for 6-man. Like, he's really
100%.
Yeah, he can really play off the bench. I just don't think that he should be getting as much volume as he has as a starter. So I think that this is good for him, that him and John Wall are going to be splitting minutes. Plus, John Wall's not going to be playing, 30, 35 minutes a game. I mean, he's going to be splitting a lot of minutes with Reggie Jackson. So Reggie Jackson is going to get his chance to have volume in the offense, while John Wall is going to have his chance to get volume in the offense. And I think both of them at their ages need a little bit of fresh legs.
Oh, of course. Absolutely. You went 4?
4, yeah.
4.
But I'm rough on this because this is winning a championship.
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
Of course. No, yeah. I'm gonna give him a 5. I think the Clippers are gonna be a really good regular season team, and they're just gonna be a team that's gonna need some breaks in the postseason. Like, they're gonna need the chips to fall perfectly because there are still matchup issues down the stretch. Like, they're gonna be a really good defensive team, I think, this season. How great offensively they're going to be, though, is what worries me. And that's why I'm going to give them a 5. I think it's a toss-up. It could go either way. But I echo a lot of your same sentiments, so I won't spend too much time on them. You just mentioned the Nuggets, so let's talk about the Nuggets. They should be getting Jamal Murray back. They should be getting Michael Porter Jr. back. They've got the 2-time league MVP. What are the odds the Denver Nuggets win a championship next season?
Okay, well, they lost Will Barton, which, they lost Will Barton. Who cares? But that does matter because, like, I make an emphasis on these role players because I think it does matter that these guys come and go.
Absolutely matter. Yeah.
Yeah, and I'm not going to sit here and act like Jamal Murray, because I think now that we haven't seen Jamal Murray in a little while, people are kind of overhyping him. It's like the opposite of what we're doing with Kawhi Leonard. Like, people are forgetting about Kawhi Leonard. But I think people are like over glorifying Jamal Murray a little bit. He was really good. Don't get me wrong. He's valuable to that team, but he's not a superstar. He's not a guy that's on the level of Kawhi. It's not like they're getting a Kawhi Leonard back. You know what I mean? So while it does matter, I don't think it makes them to the point where they're not going to get swept in the first round. No question. If these guys are healthy. Does it make them title contenders? No. I would say same as the Clippers, 4. Because these guys haven't played. Michael Porter Jr. is always freaking hurt. Always hurt. And Jamal Murray, is good, but I need to see that. I need to see that the Nuggets can be something other than just Jokic. Like,
Yeah.
I like Jokic, and contrary to popular belief, I think he's very well deserving of these back-to-back MVPs. But it can't be the Jokic show. It needs to be the Denver Nuggets. And until I see that from them, I'm not confident enough in them. And also, in terms of coaching, they're outcoached by a bunch of different teams in that conference, if I'm being honest. So I would say I'm not very confident in them. Give them a 4 to win a
Give him a
championship.
5. I agree with you that I think Jamal Murray is being slightly overhyped. A lot of that has to do with the last time we saw Jamal Murray, he was playing out of his mind.
Yeah.
But the reason I'm giving him 5 is because of what you mentioned at the end there. There are a lot of coaches in the West and in basketball in general that I'd take over Mike Malone.
Yeah.
That's really all it comes down to for the Nuggets, is they're going to be outcoached a lot. So I'm not even going to spend too much time on that one. There's 3 more we got left. Let's go to the East for this one. Talked about him earlier, James Harden taking a $15 million pay cut to stay with the Sixers, potentially help them bring in more pieces. I've seen reports that they're potentially shopping Matisse Thybulle. I think I saw somewhere that they might also be shopping Tobias Harris. I don't know how valid those things are or if they're still pursuing that. But as currently constructed, this is still a solid basketball team. Dealt with some health issues last season. What are the odds that the Philadelphia 76ers win the chip next season?
I would say there's a 5 out of 10. I would give them a 5 out of 10. The reason being is I think James Harden is going to kind of find his role better in the offense this year, like I kind of alluded to earlier. Obviously, Joel Embiid is that guy. He proved that last year. And now you're getting guys like PJ Tucker. We've seen Tyrese Maxey ball out. You have a bunch of other nice role players in there in Philadelphia. It's not coming to the top of my head. I hate when that happens. But they do have nice role players. They now have more cap space because James Harden took a team-friendly deal to go out and get guys. Tobias Harris, while he might be slightly overpaid, still can get buckets at times as a third option. I think that's very good for them. I like the Sixers. I'm high on the Sixers. The only thing is Doc Rivers in the postseason kind of scares me sometimes. A lot of times his teams are playoff contenders, but not really title contenders. And they just need to get over that hump this year. But James Harden needs to be the biggest thing for Philly is less of the role players. It's can James Harden be the second option? Because Tobias Harris can't be. Tyrese Maxey can't be your second option. You need to have James Harden as your second option. Last year, I didn't feel like he was that, especially in the playoffs. When Embiid went down, that was Harden's time to shine. That's why you brought in Harden, was for him to step up and get the team past the Miami Heat in the absence of Joel Embiid. Didn't happen, obviously, especially in the fourth. The moment was too big for him. I don't know. It just didn't happen. And I would expect a little bit more from James Harden this year. That's what it's riding on. I'd say 5. Not quite as much as the Bucks. I would say right now I'd still have the Celtics over them as well. But right now I'd say 5 for the Sixers.
I'll give the Sixers a 6, ironically enough. I think unlike most people that we know, and just most people in general, have faith in James Harden. Mm-hmm. I think what we saw last season was a product with James Harden forcing his way out of 2 teams in just as many years and just being flat out of shape, I think. I think if James Harden is in shape this season, I think we see elite basketball. I'm not talking about Houston James Harden. I'm talking about 22-12, 20-13. Yep. Elite basketball from James Harden. And if Joel Embiid can kind of rely on James Harden, and if Maxey can be the third option, and if Tobias can be the fourth option, the last time the Sixers had 4 reliable scorers, with Embiid being the 1, a guy that can facilitate and score being the 2, a guy that is more so of a facilitator than a scorer being the third option, and Tobias Harris being the fourth option. Jimmy Butler was on the team, and that was a championship contender, and it took, and I'll keep saying it, the luckiest shot in the history of ever to knock them out of the playoffs. Mm-hmm. I think that is what the Sixers have for them right now going into the season. There is room for improvement. I think with the cap space that they have, they need to be targeting the bench, because the reason why you can't name any role players is because they don't have any role players.
Yeah.
Because they sent them all away in the trade for James Harden. But with the cap space that they have, they can definitely sign and or trade for some to bolster up that bench. The Doc Rivers point is an excellent one, and I'm not going to beat that dead horse, but Doc Rivers scares me too. And that is also something that you need to worry about, because, again, no matter how talented your players are, if your coach isn't good when it matters, then it doesn't matter who's on the roster. Let's go back to this one team. Let's talk about the other LA teams. Let's talk about the Lakers. I've got two for you for the Lakers. We'll start with the first one. The Lakers as currently constructed.
0. I mean, come on. 0. Like, Anthony Davis is made out of glass. Russell Westbrook sucks. LeBron James is Hollywood, and he's going to put up numbers, but he's not worried about winning. He's too cool for LA right now. Like, he's too cool for that team. He's like, yeah, Westbrook, dude, just jack up threes and miss every single one of them. I don't freaking care. I'm out here making movies and watching my son's basketball games, which is cool. But let's be honest here. In terms of winning a title, if the Lakers as currently constructed, are we going to talk about them as title contenders? No, there's a 0% chance of them winning a championship if they keep the roster they have right now. That was the easiest question you've ever asked me.
That's fair. No, obviously there's been reports that they're trying to get KD and or Kyrie. It's looking like the Spurs are probably going to be the instrumental piece in getting that trade to go through. With KD and or Kyrie, though, what are the odds the Celtics win a championship this upcoming season?
With Kyrie, I would give them a 7. I would give the Lakers a 7 because we've seen it. We've seen LeBron and Kyrie. We've seen it happen. We've seen how great it is. And now you add Anthony Davis, potentially, if he stays healthy, which I hope he does. He's a great player. Let's be honest. I want him to be on the court. I want him to be healthy. He's fantastic to watch. When he was in New Orleans, I considered him to be the second best player in the NBA behind LeBron James when he was healthy. I really was that high on him. And I thought when the Lakers got him, I was like, you have the first and second best player in the NBA on the same team. It never really panned out that way. Anthony Davis never really lived up to the hype. And obviously with the injury concerns, you have that there. But Kyrie and LeBron, say what you want about Kyrie. Kyrie and his weirdness, his uniqueness, I'll say, to be polite. He's a freaking great basketball player still. I mean, he averaged over 27 last year. And I get that he only played in half the games, but he still averaged over 27. And you could make the argument that if he played the full season, he would have been an MVP conversation. He was playing that out of his mind when he actually got to play. So if you have Kyrie there and he's playing basketball and he's committed, which I think that he realizes he needs to be now, I hope. I think the Lakers would have a 7 with Kyrie. I don't think they're going to get Kevin Durant, so I'm not even going to question that, because if you pair KD, Kyrie, LeBron, okay, obviously that's just ridiculous. But like 2K is fake.
I agree with you. As currently constructed, they're not a title contender, but being the LeBron fan that I am, and Twitter calls us LeBron sexuals, whatever, I'm just going to give him a 1 out of respect for LeBron James. With Kyrie, I'll give him a 6, because as great as LeBron and Kyrie are together, how often are they going to be together? And that is the big if with that. So we'll see. One more. Whichever team lands Kevin Durant, how likely are they going to be to win the championship?
Dude, don't even. This is such a hard question. Because I'm under the impression, and now this might be a little bit outlandish, but I'm under the impression that there's a chance that he plays for the Nets next year. Because I'm starting to think that Kevin Durant, and this is all you could thank Rudy Gobert for this freaking debacle here, because
of course,
Rudy Gobert, the fact that Rudy Gobert on the trade market got 5 players, a pick swap, and 4 first-round picks ruins any potential trade for Kevin Durant. Any potential team that was looking to trade for Kevin Durant, it's done. You can't afford him. You have no shot at being able to afford him, because the Nets are just going to look to, well, look at what Rudy Gobert got. And now you're gonna try to trade me something comparable for Kevin Durant. You're done. And I'm starting to think that teams literally can't afford Kevin Durant. We have rumors that the Brooklyn Nets front office called Minnesota and said, "Hey, give me Karl Anthony Towns and 4 firsts for Kevin Durant." And the Timberwolves said no. The asking price for Kevin Durant is so high that teams are literally saying no. They can't afford him. So if he stays with the Nets next year and Kyrie's gone, 0-2. 0. The East is too good. The East is too good for it to be a one-man show. It really is. And I don't have faith in Ben Simmons like you do. Ben Simmons comes back. Oh,
no, I only have faith in. I only have faith in Ben Simmons if he's by himself.
Yeah.
I don't have faith in Ben Simmons if he's with someone else.
So if he stays in Brooklyn, 0. If he goes to the Suns, I say extremely likely. If he goes to the Raptors, I mean, it all depends on what are they going to have to give up. Because if you're going to play 1v5, then no. If you're going to play 1v5, then no. But if you can actually put together a reasonable trade package for Durant, then obviously you're one of the top 2 or 3 teams in your conference instantly. But I don't know how anyone's going to be able to afford him, especially after what Rudy Gobert did. Rudy Gobert ruined the trade market. Ruined it. Yeah. It's done.
Rudy Gobert has ruined
Rudy
basketball.
Gobert in a 2-year
Thank
span
you, Rudy Gobert.
has freaking ended the NBA. He got the NBA canceled. Okay. And he's robbed multiple players of Defensive Player of the Year because he gets hyped up for no freaking reason. And now he's ruined the trade market. Ruined it.
Yeah, Rudy Gobert has single-handedly ruined basketball for the last 5 years. Absolutely. And I will die on that hill. Well, there's nothing I can say that can follow that up. So let's talk about the last topic of the night. And it is an interesting one. It is one that the more that I've thought about over the past couple of days, the more I think it's a conversation worth having. And it is the title of the show. Is loyalty in the NBA overrated?
Yes. To an extent. Yes, it is. Dame, listen, I get you didn't run away from the grind, bro. But guess what? You're going to have no MVPs, no scoring titles, no championships to show for your NBA career. Bradley Beal, I wanted him to leave Washington so bad. He didn't. And I think that anyone who understands winning knows that winning-wise, it's better for players to move around. Let's be honest. We don't remember Shaq the same way if he stays in Orlando his entire career. And we probably don't remember LeBron the same way if he stays in Cleveland the entire time. We don't remember Kevin Durant if he stays in Oklahoma City and wins nothing the entire time. Guys, there's a divide here because there's guys that want to win, and then there's guys that want to be comfortable. And I can understand the argument behind a guy like Bradley Beal and saying, oh, well, he has a wife and kids in Washington. He doesn't want to just pack them up and move them. And he wants to just get the money, play some basketball, and that's that. And that's okay. That's a perfectly respectable lifestyle. I mean, I wish I could do that. You know what I'm saying? I mean, it's an unbelievable blessing to be able to have that choice. But then there's guys that want to win. And Kevin Durant, I know I'm preaching to the choir here. Kevin Durant gets dogged on all the time for going to Golden State. While I think obviously it looks bad, and as a Cavs fan, I freaking can't stand it, but dude had an opportunity to go win some championships. Can you blame him? Can you blame him? You know, and it's like, some people are going to say, oh, no loyalty and this and that, but it's like, you want rings, you want championships, you want legacy. And sometimes I'm gonna say this, in 10 years, it's not going to matter that Kevin Durant joined the Warriors to get those rings. It's not. We're going to look at him as a guy who is a part of one of the biggest dynasties in modern basketball in the Golden State Warriors, and he was an essential part to 2 of 4 of those championships. And that's what he's going to be remembered as, rather than the guy who didn't run away from the grind in OKC, stayed there, had a bunch of first, second round exits, and that was that. So loyalty as a whole is overrated because Dame could have a championship by now if he wanted to. Bradley Beal could be on a championship team right now if he wanted to. And not a lot of guys are able to do what like Tim Duncan did, where it's like you get drafted to an organization that had no business having the number 1 overall pick, really only did because David Robinson was hurt that year. And you already get drafted to a team that's stable and building, so then you could stay there your whole career and win championships. Not a lot of guys have that. A lot of guys have to move around. And Shaq was one of the first superstars that started that, going to LA. And then LeBron added on. And now you have KD doing it. Now you have a bunch of stars moving around. Kevin Durant is still moving. Guys like James Harden are moving. And I think it's important that we look at that and say they're trying to win championships, because it's a double-edged sword. Okay, you're joining good teams and building super teams to win championships, but if you're Bradley Beal, I'm going to hate on you for not trying to win championships. So I would say loyalty is overrated, but also there's a reason behind it, I guess.
So, believe it or not, there aren't that many players who have stayed on one team their entire career.
No.
Most of them, you probably never heard of them. Let's just run down the list, shall we? Draymond Green, 4-time NBA champion. Dame Lillard, no championships. Bradley Beal, no championships. Darrell Griffith doesn't have a championship. He played all 10 of his seasons in his career with Utah. Alan Leavell, never heard of his name until just now. He also doesn't have a championship. He played all 10 of his seasons in Houston. Tom Boerwinkle, he doesn't have a championship. He played all his seasons in Chicago. Bill Bradley played 10 years in New York. He has 2 championships. So that's the first guy on this list, not named Draymond Green, that's got a championship, at least one. Willis Reed played his entire career in New York. He has 2 championships. Cliff Hagan played his entire career with the Hawks. He has 1 championship in 58. Al Bianchi played 10 years with the Sixers. He doesn't have a championship. Paul Arizin played all his time in Golden State. He has 1 championship back in 56. Vern Mickelson, Mark Eaton, Dr. J played his entire career in Philly. He has 1 chip. Rudy Tomjanovich. I'm so sorry if I'm butchering these names, but half these people I've never heard of before. He doesn't have a championship. Al Attles played his entire career in Golden State. He doesn't have a championship. I can keep going. Bob Pettit played his entire career. He has 1 championship, and he played his entire career with the Hawks. Rick Smits played his entire career with the Pacers. He doesn't have a championship. James Worthy played his entire career in LA. He's got 3 chips. Love James Worthy. Great dude. Michael Cooper played his entire career with the Lakers. I can just keep going. He also doesn't have a championship. There are so many great talents that have played at least 10 years in the NBA and don't have a championship. Steph Curry got 4, obviously. Then you start getting to your Isaiah Thomases and your Kevin McHale's and your Magic Johnsons and your Larry Birds, right? You've got Bill Russell, obviously, David Robinson, Joe Dumars, Jerry West, Elgin Baylor. Nick Collison played 14 years in OKC. He don't have a chip. Hal Greer's got a chip, I believe. So does Dolph Schayes. Havlicek's got chips. Ginobili's got chips. Reggie Miller played all 18 years in Indiana. I don't think Reggie Miller has a championship either. Udonis Haslam's been in the league since I've been alive. He doesn't have a championship. John Stockton, one of the greatest point guards of all time, doesn't have a championship. Tim Duncan, Kobe Bryant, Dirk Nowitzki. Dirk Nowitzki's been in the league, played in 21 seasons. He has 1 championship. And if we're being honest, if LeBron James played LeBron James basketball, Dirk Nowitzki doesn't have a championship. Mm-hmm. Loyalty is so overrated, and it is the ultimate damned if you do, damned if you don't. And I talked about this on MJ Show yesterday, and I posted a clip on my page with Kevin Durant. If Kevin Durant stays in OKC, and he's still in Oklahoma City Thunder, and he never wins a chip, okay, he's a former scorers champion, he's a former MVP, but what are we going to say about KD? All this talent, he doesn't have a chip. Okay, well, he recognized that, so he goes and he gets himself a chip, and what do we say? Oh, well, if he doesn't go in a chip on his own, he means nothing, and these chips mean nothing. So then what does he do? He goes and he leaves Golden State, which we all believe was the perfect situation. He leaves Golden State to go try and get a championship. Now he doesn't. People ignore that him and many other players on his team have been dealing with injury, and now it's, he shouldn't have left Golden State. Bradley Beal. Bradley Beal's loyal, which is apparently what we love. We love to see loyal players. But yet everyone wants to bash Bradley Beal for not having left the Wizards because it's like, oh, he doesn't want to win championships. Damian Lillard stays in Portland. In fact, he just signed a 2-year, $122 million extension today. That will make him the highest paid player in 2025 and 2026. We love loyalty, but all we say every time Damian Lillard's name comes up is we want to see him get out of Portland so we can get a championship. We can't, as fans and as members of the media, we can't have it both ways. In one breath, we can't say we want it. Oh, we hate the player empowerment movement because it's ruined basketball and no one wants to stay anymore. But in the same token, we can also look at them and then say, you keep staying here. Are you sick of losing? Let's be honest, dude. LeBron James isn't LeBron James if he doesn't move around. Right? There are two guys in the NBA today, two superstars anyway, in the NBA today that have won a championship with the team that drafted them and didn't go anywhere. Steph Curry and Antetokounmpo. That's it. And I said this on MJ Show again, and I'll say it again here today, and I mean this not in the way that you think, but LeBron James and Michael Jordan and Steph Curry and Magic Johnson and Larry Bird and all these great players at the multiple championships, you might as well just say they ruined basketball. Because they make winning championships look so easy. Every time Jordan's in the finals, he's got a chip. LeBron went to 10 straight finals, won 4 of them. Curry just won his 4th chip. Giannis has won a chip, right? We're talking about Magic's got 5 chips. Bird's got, Bill Russell's got 11. Kareem's got, 5 or 6? Duncan's got 5. All these great players made winning championships look easy. I'll take it out of basketball. Tom Brady has ruined championships because he got 7 of them. He's been to more Super Bowls than anybody. Serena Williams has ruined sports, and so has Tiger Woods. That's basically what we're saying. Because apparently, great players being great and being really good for extended period of times and winning championships has apparently ruined the sport. So we look at other great players like a Kawhi, like a Kevin Durant, like a Dame Lillard, all these other fantastic players that are really, really good but can't win a championship or don't win a championship in their own home spot. Oh, they're terrible. We said Kevin Durant going to Golden State was the weakest move in the history of basketball. And I'm inclined to agree with you to an extent. Should you have gone to Golden State, KD? No, you shouldn't have. That wasn't the best decision. But if Kevin Durant stays in the Thunder and he's still a member of the Thunder today, how many championships does Kevin Durant have? 0. Will we look at Kevin Durant as being potentially a top 20, top 15 player of all time? Probably not. We wouldn't. We would recognize him as being one of the greatest players to never win a championship, though. That's for sure. We would look at him the same way we look at Charles Barkley, the same way we look at Stockton and Malone and Allen Iverson. Great players. They don't have a championship, though. Loyalty is so overrated, and it is such a double-edged sword. Because from the eyes of the fans and from the eyes of the media and consumers of the product, loyalty is only valued when you win a championship. That's why everyone loves Steph Curry. But let's be honest. If Steph Curry stays in Golden State all this time and they never win a championship, Steph Curry will be getting, you're this great. You're the greatest shooter of all time. Where's the championships? That's what we. I'm not. That's not conjecture. That's what's been shown to me. If LeBron stays in Cleveland and never leaves to go to Miami and he doesn't win a championship, LeBron would get slandered double time because he was supposed to be the next big thing. If Jordan stayed in Chicago, never won a championship as great as he was, we'd slander Jordan too. Loyalty is so overrated, and you're only praised for being loyal if you win a championship. And I think that we've forgotten that winning a championship is so hard to do. Take Bradley Beal, for instance. He plays for the Washington Wizards. The Washington Wizards have been championship good since they were the Washington Bullets. And if I'm not mistaken, the Bullets have 1 championship in their franchise history, if that. That's how long it's been since the Washington Wizards have been good. Here's another thing for you that not a lot of people like to recognize. Bradley Beal, as much as I love him, was never the golden boy in DC. That was always John Wall. The Wizards have yet to get accustomed to life after John Wall. They're still trying to figure out how to build around Bradley Beal. You talk about Dame Lillard in Portland. Portland hasn't sniffed the finals since Clyde Drexler. They haven't been good. It is not Damian Lillard's fault that he got drafted to Portland, and he shouldn't be slandered for wanting to deliver a championship to Portland. Let's be honest. The only reason LeBron James went back to Cleveland was because he really wanted to deliver a championship to Cleveland. Why? Because that's the team that drafted him, and 2, because he's from Akron, Ohio. That's it. That's the only reason LeBron went back to Cleveland, right? And if KD were to go back to OKC and deliver a championship to the Thunder, oh, we would love KD so much.
Oh, yeah.
But if he stayed in the OKC and never left and didn't win a championship, it'd be terrible. Again, Dirk Nowitzki played 21 seasons in the NBA. He won one championship, and there's a legitimate argument that can be made that if LeBron James wasn't so bad and didn't play as bad as he played in those 2011 finals, Dirk wouldn't even have that championship. And you're going to sit here and tell me that loyalty isn't overrated? Loyalty is 100% overrated in the NBA, and it only works in the favor of the guys whose teams actually win championships. That's it. If you're loyal and your team doesn't win a championship, you're slandered. If you leave to go win a championship, you're deemed a snake, you're branded as a villain, and you're unloyal and you're slandered. It's a damn if you do, damned if you don't. And like you said, and in today's NBA, you're gonna have to move around to win a championship. That's just how it works nowadays. Because the NBA is so much a business. Like, we talk about it being a business, we want to defend front office decisions for moving on from a young player like a DeJounte Murray. But when a player decides to go in business for themselves to move on to get themselves better situation and position to win a championship, they're crucified for it. And I hate it so much. Loyalty is absolutely overrated. And if you disagree with me, and if you disagree with that fact, you're insane. And as Payton said the other day about the Chiefs, you're a moron if you don't think that loyalty is overrated in the NBA, because it's insane. Mic drop. I would drop this, but I paid a good amount of money for this, so I'm not going to drop it. But seriously, I hate it. Loyalty is so overrated. And it's a shame that so many great players don't get the respect that they deserve because they stay, but then they also get slandered for leaving. I hate it so much. So much. It's like the only time a loyal player gets his flowers is if he stays his whole career, plays really good ball, and doesn't win a championship. That's it. But during his career, all you're going to hear is, man, when is he going to leave and go get a championship? Shut up. Shut up. I hate it so much. Jeez. Now, I'm done ranting for the day. For the night, rather. It's almost 11 o'clock.
Yeah.
Thank you, Payton, for coming on the show. Like I said, we might as well just call this Payton Doyle week because he's been on 3 of the 4 episodes that have dropped this week.
Sounds like a good week.
It's a fantastic week if you ask me. Let everybody know where they can find you for the 3rd time this week.
All right. So, yeah, if you guys haven't heard already, you can find me at PD Sports on YouTube, TikTok, Instagram, at Payton Doyle Show on Twitter and Facebook. I post the majority of my content on TikTok, YouTube, and Instagram, so I would suggest go find me there. But if you haven't already, subscribe to Marcus because he's going to get into the whole spiel of all of you who are unsubscribed that are watching right now and are not subscribed. You need to subscribe ASAP. And I've also had a fun week. It's been a good week of going on Go Talk with Marcus.
I appreciate it.
Yeah, Payton Doyle week is definitely should happen more because this has been a lot of fun, bro. So thank you.
It has been an absolute pleasure having Payton on the show 3 to 4 times this week. Please check out all the episodes. We're moving right along with a lot of things that's going on. I appreciate all the love, all the support. As of today, we are just inside of a month away from 2 years of Go Talk. It's been an amazing journey. August 1st marks 2 years of Go Talk with Marcus, and I've enjoyed every episode. We're also closing in on 200 episodes as well. I love all you guys. Appreciate all the support. Thank you guys for watching, subscribing. You can guys follow me on Instagram, Twitter, TikTok, GTP Marcus on everything. Go Talk with Marcus on Spotify, iHeartRadio, Apple Podcasts. And for all you old heads out there that love to use Facebook, well, Go Talk with Marcus is on Facebook now. There's nothing on the page right now because I just made the page like earlier today. But I know there's a lot of you guys that don't use Instagram, Twitter, and TikTok. I don't know what that means. What's a TikTok? I get it. We're on Facebook now. I'll start making sure that I put some stuff on Facebook as well, so that you guys, the older crowd, can see this as well.
Justin
yeah, that's that. Yeah. First of all, Justin Marvel needs to start coming back on the show. I know he's got a lot going on, but like, stop ghosting.
He's married, bro. That's what happens.
Yeah, he's sold his soul. It's fine. It's whatever. I still got Payton and other guys that are willing to come on the show whenever I need. It's all fine and dandy. I know this. If Justin Marvel doesn't come on the Packers show for this NFL offseason series, there's going to be hell to PayPal. I'm going to fly to Wisconsin and it's not going to be pretty, bud. So Really, that's all I care about. You just better be on the Packer show because you gave me your word, and that's the only show I really care about, quite honestly, at this point. But yeah, all jokes aside, though, I mean, happiness to you, and tell Mrs. Marvel that I'm very appreciative for all the time that I've taken away from her, so that you can sit here and talk sports with me. I do appreciate it. I really do. But still, stop giving me the cold shoulder, bro. But yeah, that's it. So for Payton Doyle, the Payton Doyle Show, this is Marcus, the Go Talk Marcus, signing off. Thank you guys for watching, and as always, you guys enjoy the rest of your lives. And subscribe to the channel.